What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today is another GoPro quick tip day, except it's not going to be a quick video, it's going to be a really long video. So grab your drinks and let's dive into this. So we all love our GoPros for various reasons. We use them for a ton of stuff: high action sports, vlogging, cinematic stuff, using it as your main studio camera for YouTube setups like this. But none of this can actually be done if you don't know how to set up your GoPro and if you don't understand what Pro Tune settings you need to use on this little device. So in today's video, that's exactly what we're talking about. We are talking about GoPro settings and Pro Tune settings on your camera. I'm going to show you exactly what presets I have on my camera and why I like to set up my camera in this particular way. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on our GoPro cameras. We're going to swipe down to the dashboard and look at the quick settings that you have on your dashboard, and that's exactly where I get started when I buy a new GoPro. Swipe down to your dashboard. The first control that you're going to see on the top left-hand side of your dashboard is your voice control. This is basically you being able to look at your camera and talk to the GoPro. Tell your GoPro, GoPro take a photo, or GoPro take a time lapse, and the GoPro is going to hear you and listen to your voice and start shooting either photos, videos, or time lapses based on what you have said. Fantastic setting if you're out and about, but for me, I keep it off. The next setting is basically the beeps. Now, when I'm out shooting in congested environments, when there are a lot of people around, I keep the beeps off. But on a general everyday basis, when I'm at home and I'm filming at home, just making YouTube videos like this, I don't mind the beeps, so I keep them on. But I am flexible with this. Okay, the next little rabbit that you see is known as quick capture. So ever since the GoPros came out, the main thing about a GoPro was being able to pull out this tiny camera from your pocket, hit the shutter button, and start recording. That feature is basically quick capture. Now, you can turn that off. There are a lot of times that I'm pulling out my camera and my finger accidentally hits the shutter button and everything goes kaput. The camera starts recording, and sometimes you just don't want that. It's an accidental press. So I normally keep it off, but if you're somebody who captures action sports, somebody who's out traveling and you're using this as your travel camera, it's a really handy feature to keep on. Next little icon represents the lock screen. The lock screen button is ideally for basically locking your screen in any condition where your touchscreen will not work. Now, what I think this is mainly used for is when you're underwater, because when you're underwater, to be able to use touch controls is crazy. It's really flimsy. So what you want to do when you go underwater is you want to hit the lock screen button, and you can actually shift between your modes within your GoPro by using the shutter button as well as the mode button. Hold them together and you can actually circulate your modes. I think it's a really handy feature, but for me it makes no difference. I do very little underwater shooting with my GoPro, at least till date. Okay, so the bottom line of the settings, the first icon that you see on the left hand side is your grid. Now, grid is basically these three lines that you see on your GoPro screen. As you can see, you have horizontal and vertical lines dividing my screen into three different parts. I use the 3x3 grid. Grid is really useful for you to understand how to frame up your shots. You can basically understand if your subject is in the center or not, and you can basically use the rule of thirds to frame up any particular shot. Everyone from beginners to professionals should use the grid if you're unsure about your framing at any given point in time. The next option near the grid is your front screen options. That's the best part about the GoPro 9, according to me, the front facing screen. I think it's been such a game changer. It takes everyone's vlogging game to a whole new level. So the front facing screen also has a bunch of options. When you tap on it, you can basically switch off the front facing screen. You can get me a status. Basically, your settings will display on the front facing screen, but you can't see yourself. You can also go into actual screen, which is what I like to film in. So I keep this setting on within this. I use actual screen. And there's also a full screen mode where it's going to be really zoomed in. It's going to be your actual screen, but it's going to be zoomed into the subject in the center of the frame. You don't get to see what's on the sides in that. I don't like that, but a lot of people do. And if that's what you care about, pick any of these settings and you should be good to go. And the last option that you guys are going to be able to look at is the max lens mod toggle button. This button is basically used if you have the GoPro max lens mod. This is a fantastic accessory for the GoPro 9. Unfortunately, I do not have it. It's been really hard to get in India. Now, a couple of stores do have it, so I will probably buy it. I'm still unsure if I would need that accessory or not, because I already have a GoPro Max. Every time you put the max lens mod on top of your GoPro Hero 9 Black, you basically want to turn this on so you can get the right orientation. You can get that extra wide field of view. Okay, so now that we're done with the dashboard, we're going to quickly swipe left, go into preferences, go into general settings, and we're going to look at each and every one of the settings that I have here. The first is the beep volume, which I like to keep really low. The loud beeps can get really noisy, and it attracts a lot of attention, especially when you're out and about. I keep quick capture off. This is another place that you can actually toggle quick capture. For the default preset, I use last use video because I prefer using the last video. So basically, every time I turn on my camera, the last video mode that I was in is what the GoPro is going to turn on into. After that, you have your auto power off. Never. I never put my GoPro to sleep because I'm very conscious about how I'm using this camera. Auto power off. Never. LEDs. I keep all the LEDs on except when I'm shooting night lapses. When I'm shooting night lapses, I will go into this menu and turn off all the LEDs because you get that reflection from the front face noisy screen. And on a normal basis, I'll keep them on. In certain conditions, I will turn them off. Now, the next setting is really important. You have anti-flicker. In India, you should actually keep your anti-flicker to 50 Hertz because it's basically selecting your frame rate region, basically NTSC or PAL. So what I'm trying to tell you is, you're in India, you want to go with 50 Hertz, otherwise the lights behind you are going to flicker if you just use this camera in auto mode, part of the PAL frame rate region. Furthermore, video compression is the last setting over here that I actually changed. I use HEVC, which is basically a higher compression module. It's going to compress your video files a lot more, and that's why I decided to choose HEVC. It's going to save you a large amount of storage space when you do. Okay, that's it for the general settings. You're going to get out of this menu and go into the displays menu within your general preferences. Under displays, I normally keep the orientation at landscape. If you want to shoot on different social media platforms, you can change it to all, which basically means when you turn your GoPro vertical, it's going to go into vertical mode, and then you can start filming in 9:16 for TikTok or for Instagram or for any other platform that you actually want to use. Next, under orientation is your screensaver. I keep the screensaver off. I want my displays on, ready to shoot at all times. So screensaver for me is off. Choose whatever you like. It's no problem here. And the screensaver on the front screen, I just match the rear screen. So this basically means everything the back display does is what the front display does. So I just match it to the rear screen. And basically brightness is at 80%. I like camera to be pretty bright. I have more than one battery on me. But if you just want your battery to last really long, keep it around 60 to 80%. That should save a good amount of battery life in my opinion. Okay, that's it. That's it for the first few settings that I changed within the preferences, the dashboard, the setting menus on the GoPro 9 when I pick up a brand new camera. You have officially gotten started with setting up your GoPro 9. Your basic settings are done. Now we're going to deep dive and create more professional settings. We're going to create special presets for every condition that I like to shoot in. So on my GoPro camera, I have 6 presets that are already set up and ready to use at any given point in time. The first one that you can see is the selfie preset. After that, I have the standard preset, the activity preset, the cinematic preset, which we've already constructed on the channel. We went through an entire video where we created a cinematic preset together. So if you guys have not seen that video, definitely go check it out. I'm going to leave it in the cards here somewhere, or I'm going to leave a link in description for you guys to check out. Next, after the cinematic preset, we have the slow motion preset and the POV, the point of view preset. Okay, so the first preset that I have is the selfie preset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through whatever settings I have in each preset, and then I'm going to tell you exactly why I use this particular preset and what scenarios I use it. Selfie preset. First thing you have is your resolution and frame rate 5K at 24 frames per second. I want the maximum resolution when I'm shooting my face because it's not the prettiest face in the world. I want to make it look as good as this camera can, and 24 frames per second because I want that little cinematic motion blur. I love 24 frames per second. It's one of my favorite frame rates to shoot majority of my videos on this channel. The lens that I use for this is the linear lens. It takes out that fisheye effect from your GoPro footage. It's one of my favorite lenses that GoPro's ever made. I absolutely adore this lens. Hyper smooth boost. Okay, so this I normally keep. So when I'm out vlogging and I'm walking around with the camera and the camera is pointed at my face, I want maximum stability at all times. I don't want the entire image to be shaky and jerky because you're not going to be able to watch the video and listen to what I am saying. That's it. These are the only settings that I toggle in the main settings menu. We're going to go down into Pro Tune settings, which are really important. Bitrate is the amount of data in every image or every video file that your camera is actually going to capture. So I keep the bitrate at high. This is going to be standard amongst all of my presets. You always want your bitrate to be as high as possible so that you can edit out the footage in post. You can edit with a lower bitrate as well, but this just gives you more flexibility. Next is your shutter. In this case, since it's basically just a selfie preset, it's a vlogging preset, my shutter is on auto. This is basically my run and gun vlogging preset, so my shutter is always on auto. Exposure value compensation is -0.5. GoPros and phones will always overexpose the image. It's a characteristic of the cameras. It's normally seen in the majority of these cameras in the market. So I like to keep it at -0.5. I can always give the exposure a slight boost in post. White balance as of now is set up at 4500 Kelvin. The white balance is never ever going to be automatic on my camera as far as I can help it. I always try to dial it in. White balance will basically change every now and then. It'll depend on where I'm filming at. If I'm filming indoors, I'll change the white balance to something cooler. If I'm filming outdoors, it'll be something warmer just to match the actual ambient light and the actual scene around me. ISO minimum and ISO maximum. So ISO minimum and maximum is set to 100 and 800. Now the thing about ISO is it's the sensitivity of your camera sensor to light. Now GoPros have really tiny sensors, and basically if you keep the ISO really high, what happens is you're going to get really noisy and grainy footage. Even though the image will be brighter, it will be pretty bad looking. It's not going to be the prettiest looking image in the world. And when you're pointing the camera at your face, you want your face to look as noise free as possible. So I keep the maximum ISO at 800, and basically that normally works just fine for me. Other than that, you have your sharpness. GoPros, phones, action cameras in general over sharpen the image. On GoPros in general, my basic go-to setting for sharpness is medium. I always keep medium sharpness on. Color, GoPro color, like I said, run and gun preset. I don't want to have to color grade in post when I'm using this preset, or if I'm in a scenario where I have to use this preset. So color is always GoPro color. Raw audio off, wind reduction on, run and gun. I want the GoPro to do everything for me. I want everything in automatic mode right now, so wind reduction is always on, and I think the GoPro does a fantastic job. We have our shortcuts. As you can see, I have my screen shortcuts. On the lower left, I have my lens. In case I want a wider field of view, I can switch to the wide lens. Exposure compensation, again, depends where I'm at. Sometimes negative 0.5 isn't enough when it's really, really bright, so I'll pull it down to -1. White balance. Like I said, I always adjust the white balance in my videos. I avoid keeping it in auto. I have made those mistakes in the past and I've learned from them, and I guess you guys will too. So white balance is also another shortcut that I keep on my screen in this preset, so I can adjust it when I'm on the go, on the fly. Keeps the image dialed in the way I like it to. And hyper smooth. Sometimes, just sometimes, when I'm standing in front of the camera and the camera is mounted, there's not a lot of movement happening, I don't need hyper smooth, because hyper smooth will crop in just a little bit. So I'll turn off the stabilization and get a slightly wider field of view even within the linear lens, which is a flat lens. These are the 4 shortcuts that I keep on my screen. As you guys can see, this is the selfie preset with the 4 shortcuts right here. Okay, so GoPro's super convenient cameras, and the selfie preset that I've set up is my super convenient automatic preset. When I'm out and about and I want to talk to the screen, I'll just point the camera to my face, start talking to it, and I am good to go. And that's exactly why I absolutely love the selfie preset. It is my vlogging preset. So when I'm out and I see something and I want to tell you guys about it, turn on the camera, throw on the selfie preset, just talk to the camera like this, and boom, that's it. Super automatic, super easy to use. I'm going to jump into the next preset, which is the standard preset on this camera. Let's do this. So the first setting that you guys can see is the frame rate and the resolution. The resolution that I choose is 4K, which is a super high resolution. I film a lot of stuff in 4K as far as possible. Frame rate that I like to choose is 60 frames per second. The lens that I'm going to use on this preset is the wide lens. Of course, I want as much of the field of view that I can get, so that's fantastic. So I always use the wide lens in my standard preset. The hyper smooth setting is on boost. I want maximum stabilization. I love GoPro stabilization. Big fan, big fan. So hyper smooth stabilization on boost. Other than that, I set up nothing else in the general settings over here. I'm going to go down to the Pro Tune settings. Bitrate as always high, shutter is automatic, exposure value -0.5. White balance is at auto on this preset, but don't worry, we're going to have it in the shortcuts menu yet again. My white balance is very rarely on auto. ISO minimum, ISO maximum, 100, 800, exact same reasons, exact same settings as the selfie preset. This is one of my automatic presets that I use that I absolutely love. I want the image to be as clear as possible. Sharpness, medium. Color GoPro, I do not want to color grade. This is an automatic quick use preset. Raw audio off and wind reduction is on auto. There are times where there is no wind reduction required. I think the GoPro's algorithm is pretty great. I just trust it in certain scenarios and boom, we're ready to shoot. This is a standard ready to shoot preset. Shortcut, lower left is your lens. Lens is very, very important. I always have it as a shortcut. You'll see this repetitively in majority of my preset. Lower right, white balance. Like I said, never on auto. I'm going to go out, I'm going to shoot just one little clip. Auto is fine. The GoPro does a great job, but if you're shooting different clips along a period of time, you want to be able to match the white balance on all those clips because they're going to be a part of one larger video. Upper left in this case is slow-mo. I'm going to tell you why. I keep the slow motion shortcut because I absolutely love it. And we have exposure value at the upper right hand side corner of my screen. That's the final shortcut because I can just adjust the exposure based on the time of day and when I'm filming. The times when I use this standard preset is basically when I do not know what I want to do. 4K at 60 FPS is fantastic. 60 frames per second is good to capture some random action that's happening around you. Plus the ability to slow 60 FPS down in post when you're editing is also fantastic. It's a great frame rate for slow motion, and that's why I keep slow motion here ready and toggled on as a shortcut on my screen. So this is my go-to run and gun preset when I'm not talking to the screen, when I'm just filming other people and walking around. Cameras in my pocket, pull it out, beep beep beep, shoot, got a shot, fantastic, captured the moment, boom, and there you go. That's it. I have the shortcuts on my screen. That was the standard preset. You can see the settings put up on the side here. Next preset we're looking at is the activity preset. Let's dive into it. Activity is for super high action. When I'm doing some massive action sports or when I'm out at sea, I want to capture the waves. The ship is moving really fast, the wind is blowing really fast, the waves are jumping and churning. I want to capture that motion. I want to be able to slow it down in post. That's when I use activity. So in this case, I'm going to set the frame rate and resolution as 2.7K at 120 frames per second. Remember, on the Hero 9, you can only shoot 120 frames per second at a maximum resolution of 2.7K. Higher than 1080p, it's lower than 4K. It's not a bad resolution at all, and it gives you fantastic image quality. It's really hard to differentiate between 2.7K and 4K, especially on YouTube. The lens that I like to use is wide. When you're capturing action, the wider the lens, the more you capture in the scene. So you want to go with hyper smooth boost because whenever you're capturing any action, you need the maximum stabilization so the video actually looks good. So hyper smooth boost, and that's basically it with the regular settings, you guys. We're going to go down to Pro Tune. Under Pro Tune, bitrate is always high. You know the drill. Shutter speed, auto. You just want the GoPro to work. That's the specialty about these cameras, so just let it work. Exposure value compensation, I keep it at 0, but again, that depends on the situation and the moment. Always remember, when you're shooting any kind of activity or action sport and you want to slow it down, you need a large amount of light coming into your sensor, which is why I normally keep it at 0. But again, if I'm shooting in really bright conditions, I will adjust the exposure value compensation. White balance, auto, you know the drill for white balance. We're not going to keep it at auto. It'll be a shortcut. Minimum ISO 100, maximum ISO is 1600 in this case. We have tweaked the ISO. It's not the the same as the previous two presets. That's basically because, like I said, you want maximum amount of light when you're shooting slow motion for the image to actually look good. So I have bumped it up just a little bit to give it a little bit more. And under most conditions when I'm shooting activity, I'm not filming my face, so I don't mind a little bit of grain coming into the image. So ISO 1600 here, sharpness medium, GoPro color. I do not want to color grade this. Raw audio off, and wind will be on auto. As for the shortcuts that we require, we are going to be using white balance on the lower left hand side. We have slow motion on the lower right because 120 frames per second in slow motion is fantastic. You can really slow it down and really get that buttery smooth image. You have hyper smooth on the upper right, and I have exposure value compensation. Like I said, if I need it, I will use it, but under most conditions, if you're shooting slow motion, shooting activity, you want a good amount of light to come into your camera. This is the activity preset. We have gone through 3 presets now that are mainly automatic. They cover a whole wide range of settings. These are basically my run and gun presets. They're my ready to use GoPro presets for various scenarios. I have tweaked a couple of settings in the activity preset with respect to ISO and exposure value, and that's basically it. So if you just want to create these 3, we've covered 5K 24 frames per second, 4K 60 frames per second, and 2.7K 120 frames per second. So basically you've covered majority of the frame rate, majority of the resolutions. All the resolutions are really high quality. The next set of presets are basically ones which I use when I actually want to go out and shoot and I have a plan in my head. Let's dive into it. The first preset we're looking at is the cinematic preset, you guys. But in case you guys missed it, we're doing it right here. Let's check it out. Okay, cinematic preset. First thing, resolution and frame rate. 5K at 24 frames per second. Lens, linear lens. When you're shooting something cinematic, you're probably going to want to match it with other cameras. Hyper smooth boost. It's not cinematic if it's jerky, so definitely boost hyper smooth. You want it to be as smooth and stable as possible. And yet again, that's it for the other settings. Gonna jump into Pro Tune settings. Bitrate, of course, you guys know the drill now. It's high. Shutter speed in this case is going to be changed. We're going to use a shutter speed of 1/48. Basically give you adequate motion blur in your image. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to take your frame rate, which is 24 frames per second in the case of this cinematic preset. You're going to double your shutter speed, so it's going to be 1/48. You can see my hand is blurry when I move it. You adjust your shutter speed. You also need to know it also affects your exposure. So EV comp automatically gets deselected. You cannot toggle this on or off. You're adjusting your exposure also using your shutter speed. White balance, as we all know, we're going to stick to auto here in the Pro Tune settings, but it's going to be in your shortcut. ISO minimum 100, ISO maximum 400. Cinematic footage should have absolutely no noise. That's my preferred choice. Sharpness, low. Under most conditions, medium sharpness is just fine, but if you want to shoot something cinematic, you want it to look a lot smoother. So I'm going to go low sharpness for the cinematic preset, just film everything like that, and I can always sharpen up the image in post. For color, you have 2 options with respect to color. You can choose your GoPro colors if you're happy with it. I actually like GoPro colors, but if you're looking at matching your GoPro with bigger DSLR or a mirrorless camera, you have the option to shoot in flat. So if you're into color grading and if that's what you're going to do, go for flat. Okay, raw audio off, wind, auto or off, it doesn't matter, because it really doesn't matter. When you're shooting cinematic stuff, you're going to have an external mic if you actually have to capture audio. The next thing we're going to look at is the shortcuts. Lower left, lens. On the lower right, in this case, we're keeping the shutter speed. Sometimes the shutter speed of 1/48, especially when you're outside during the day, may overexpose your image for you. So what I like to do at that point in time is basically put on this little guy, which is an ND filter. An ND filter basically goes on top of your lens like this. Don't have an ND filter, or if I forget to carry this little ND filter, adjust the shutter speed. I'll have to bump it up. I don't really have an option in that case. So there you guys go. We have now made a cinematic preset. We have the 4 shortcuts on the screen, and if you guys do set up your camera like this, you're definitely going to get really great results. And of course, the next preset that we're going to be looking into is the POV, which is point of view preset. You can put your GoPro on your head. You can hold your GoPro with a bite mount in your mouth. You can keep it onto your chest, and that's all point of view footage. Let's jump in and check out what the settings are. We have resolution and frame rate as usual right at the beginning, which is at 4K at 24 frames per second. The lens, super view. Super view lens is my favorite lens to use. Although if I do want to capture any kind of slow motion in POV, I will drop down the resolution to 2.7K, go to 120 frames per second as the frame rate, and maintain the super view lens. That's basically for the frame rate and resolution. And the lens, hyper smooth boost, I don't need to explain this. We're not going to adjust any of the other main settings. We're just going to jump down to Pro Tune. Bitrate's going to be high as always. Shutter speed is automatic. Exposure value will be -0.5. White balance, auto, you know the drill. ISO minimum 100. ISO maximum is back to 800. Sharpness, medium. POV, medium sharpness. Looks good. You guys can choose whatever you like. Color, GoPro. Raw audio off. Wind reduction, auto. Doesn't really matter. Shortcut, lower left hand side. We have the lens. Lower right, white balance, of course. Upper left, exposure value, hyper smooth on the top right hand side. This was the POV preset. So basically, I got a GoPro because of how easy it was while I was out at sea to be able to film my life and show you guys my perspective of the life at sea. But just having this on you, just strap it onto your body and keep doing what you're doing. And that's what I love about this. Last but not the least, we have one more preset to dive into, and this is very rarely used, but I do have it. This is the slow motion preset. Settings 1080p, but the frame rate is higher, and that's why we've dropped the resolution here. 1080p at 240 frames per second. So much more. That's 240 images every second being compiled into video for you guys. Lens wide, of course. Hyper smooth, boost, slow motion is good provided it's stable, it's not jerky, it's not weird. And as usual, we're not touching any of the other settings. We're going to jump right down to the Pro Tune menu, you guys. Bitrate high, shutter speed automatic, exposure value 0. The reason why I'm keeping exposure value 0 is because higher the frame rate, the more the light you want entering your cameras. White balance, auto, ISO minimum 100, ISO max is now up to 1600, and the reason is exactly what I explained before. You want maximum light coming into your sensor. Sharpness, medium is fine. GoPro color, yeah, GoPro color. Raw audio, wind, off, auto, whatever you like. Your shortcut settings, on the lower left, you're going to have your lens, you're going to have hyper smooth on the lower right. Of course, we have white balance and exposure value compensation if I need to bump up the exposure sometime. And that's basically it. We have made a slow motion preset. Now, the reason why I use this is because it's faster than 120 frames per second. You're capturing action that's so fast that 120 frames per second just doesn't seem like slow motion. It's a possibility. It also doesn't happen every day. So you want to be ready with another frame rate that you can use that's even higher than 120 frames per second, and that's exactly why I have 240 frames per second set up here. We've basically done it, you guys. We've seen all 6 of my GoPro presets today, and if you guys followed this video, your camera is now set up to go and shoot absolutely anything out there, you guys. You can make full use of your GoPro by using these presets. Now, I know a lot of the settings that I've shown you today, actually all of the settings that I've shown you today are on the GoPro Hero 9 Black, and I know a lot of y'all probably own a GoPro which is the Hero 7 Black or the Hero 8 Black, so this video does apply to you guys as well. There are just a few settings that you want to tweak in if you're on an older camera, like instead of choosing 5K, maybe come down to 4K, and in certain places where I've chosen 4K, if it's not available on your camera, stick to 2.7K or 1080p. That's basically the main thing. The idea behind all of this is that you choose the highest possible resolution at all times when you're filming on a GoPro. Now, another thing you want to remember when you're filming on your GoPro is also the aspect ratio. Aspect ratio is very, very important because that's basically your frame. All of the settings that I've set up with respect to 4K or 5K have always been 4K or 5K at 16:9, not at 4:3. And that's basically because I'm creating videos here on YouTube, and that's the chosen preferred aspect ratio. But if you guys are shooting for Instagram or any other platform where you need a taller image and not a wider, you want to choose 4:3, which is going to make your image a little bit taller and help you on Instagram, TikTok, any of the other platforms that you want to film on. Basically, aspect ratio is extremely important, so just pick your platform and pick your aspect ratio basis that. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I definitely hope you learned something today about your GoPro cameras. I am super excited that I got to make this video. These were my GoPro settings. If you have any other questions you want to ask me about your action cameras, about your smartphone cameras, or even your DSLR or mirrorless cameras, hit me up in the comment section. I'm available to help you solve all your tech problems, especially tech that I've covered on this channel, or DM me on Instagram. Definitely hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit the bell notification because it really helps the channel, and it's absolutely free, you guys. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. This was Nitin Chawla, and these were the best GoPro settings for video in 2021 and for your Hero 9 Black. See you next time. Peace.